I'm Harsabah Kaur, and I'm here at Illuminate East to talk to you a little bit about courage. I'm excited to be offering a workshop next week, which I've entitled Coraggio, which is the Italian word for courage. There's something very related to the lion in the word courage. We think of this lion-heartedness, this bravery, this boldness that comes to mind when we think about courage. And on the way here, I was meditating on when in my own life have I actually experienced or touched into what courage is. And I would say that courage comes when you've been pressurized, when you've reached a point where you need to both surrender and act. It's a space, an intersecting space that connects with the negative mind and the positive mind. Courage is what is invoked, it's what comes up when we really need to shift the energy, when we need to break through a pattern which is definitively no longer working. And I was thinking in my own life about my experience with courage, and the moment in my life that I can call to is the moment of giving birth. So the metaphor of giving birth is always relevant. It's something we've all experienced when we were born. There's a moment in which the baby and the mama sink into this space which they're not thinking about anymore. It's where they can no longer resist what is happening. When they've moved to a space hormonally, emotionally, physically, where things are going to shift. And that process of peristalsis begins and you can no longer hold it back. Giving birth, having a baby with grace is probably a little different than having a baby with fear. And having 3 children, I can speak to the variation of experience, but there's something that happens for those of you who can remember your own birth and who are given birth. There's something very automatic that occurs, and it's this courageous space that we can enter into with change. Alchemists say that nothing can really happen, nothing new can happen until we reach a state of dissolving what was. So there's something in courage to removing a veil and becoming more intimate with the moment. Rilke says that courage is an angel and that all angels are terrifying. Yogi Bhajan talks about how we will not act, really. We don't act until we don't have a choice. So courage is what comes online when you've trained yourself to act with grace and vulnerability, and when you're willing to be really intimate with what is, to make change. And I was thinking, what is the meditation for courage? And so many come up within the Kundalini tradition. We have mantras for courage. We have many meditations for courage. There's this energy of the warrior spirit, this energy of the hero, of the heroine, of protecting what's sacred, of moving forth into the complex density of life with courage, with warriorship. But what came to mind when I thought about offering you today, spring meditation for courage, was just this image of this brave little seed which has germinated, which has become exposed to the element, that courageous little tendril of life, that little fiddlehead fern, or that small animal that's in the herd that has no choice but to migrate in search of food, but it's small and it's on the edge and it's vulnerable. That little animal on the edge of the herd is courage, but courage is also the way the herd of animals sort of surround that smaller animal and provide protection and presence. So in a way, when we're courageous in our own lives, we have to be that little vulnerable tendril that could be frosted out and killed, or that courageous deer that's on the edge of the path that needs to migrate. We need to be both vulnerable and also protective. And when you look in your own life where courage is really called for, it's really where you're afraid. And your fear likely comes from feelings of inadequacy or insecurity, or an intrusive voice in this limbic space, this child space where your heartbeat was set, but also where you got an idea about who you were on the planet from your parents. When you go limbic, or you react just from your automatic process. If we go back to that space and look into the eye of that fear or that reality, and we reprogram ourselves in meditation, we can be responders, courageous leaders and responders, as opposed to reactors. And there is a meditation, a technique, a spiritual practice, which I believe comes from shamanism, and it's called recapitulation. The first time I learned it was in a Buddhist context, and later one of my teachers, Guru Dharm Singh, introduced it in a Kundalini space, and it's something that I've integrated into my own practice. It's very simple. In my practice, it begins with the centering, a sitting in a weighted way, and a breathing. And as I breathe, I begin to invite an intimacy with the moment, to occupy my body with my breath, to focus on an exhale, and to conjure or look into the energy of my true self, or to begin with my eyes closed to look into my own eyes and to inquire or perceive what it is that I'm afraid of, and to go towards that. And that takes some time. It takes just a few minutes. Some call it the box breath, or the four-segmented breath, or I think in the military it's considered a tactical breath. But I'll begin to inhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4, and hold for a count of 4. And over a very brief period of time, maybe 2 minutes, something will begin to soften and to shift as I continue to imagine kind of looking into my own eyes and becoming intimate with what's holding me back, with what I'm afraid of. The practice is pretty simple. Once you've established that baseline of presence in the moment with your pranayama, and there's so many that you can use, you might have some tools in your toolbox. It's very simple. You inhale and take your gaze over to the left shoulder like this. In a slow way, you kind of feel the breath in your body. You hold it, you become intimate with it. And then as you exhale, you blow over to the right shoulder. And as you do this in a space of inquiring about your fear, there's usually a story that's going to unlock for you. And it's usually a story that you're very familiar with. It could have to do with a parent or a traumatic issue that occurred in various traditions of trauma resolution, tapping or havening. You work with a similar technique. You go into that space of trauma or that story, the center of your fear, and you invite it towards you. You allow whatever particular memories come up, and as you exhale, you just simply reset and you go back in. So it's like becoming exposed or entering the door of the space where your fear lives. And hopefully, behind that fear, you might get to a place of reality, and a place of maybe even anger. And behind that, you might get to a place of tenderness And within that, you'll get to a place of intimacy with all that really is. And often it's your feeling that you're unlovable. And hopefully by sort of getting to know yourself and dwelling in this space, this unlovable space, the courage sets in and you invite yourself courageously back. You reset yourself and you invite that exiled place back to live with you. And when you've done that enough in your own personality system, you begin to automatically adopt that presence with other people. So it happened. So we felt abandoned or we were triggered by each other. But we're able to have that tough conversation, that difficult encounter where we look straight at what reality is and we reset with presence and courage and love. It looks like this. I would recommend 11 minutes with this breath. Prep yourself with maybe the 4-part segmented breath and then move into this space for 11 minutes. It's important that you don't think of it as pulling towards and pushing away. That is a technique that sometimes can be conjured or called up by different meditations. I'm thinking about this one, or blowing the sand off the planes or off the mandala or the tabla of your imagination. This is quite different. It's a moving towards and then towards again and then towards again. It's a turning the page and going towards what scares you so that you can develop this lion-hearted, bold courage. I was thinking about my last baby's birth, Cosmos. Those of you who know me know that just 3 days before my baby Cosmos was born, my mother died. And so some people say, oh, you've been so brave, you were so courageous, right, to have this baby. But I laugh because, yes, my loving presence in his life is filled with grace. But the process of coming into a place of courage was automatic, and that was brought on just by what needed to be, which was love. So I think about that moment where you feel like you're about to die, and then something happens, and that's that your body, your heart, your life goes into an automatic process of courage and of love. It's what's there if you just go into it and don't numb out, don't medicate your way out of it. Just go for it. Thank you so much, Satnam.